Gunfire pierced the air for 10 agonizing minutes as James Hodgkinson opened fire.
Emergency crews rushed injured House Majority Whip Steve Scalise into a helicopter after a shooter opened fire during an early morning baseball practice for congressional Republicans.
Because it feels like the level of rhetoric, violent rhetoric, and tension is really at an all-time high in our country. Some things have happened that our people who are unstable and didn't need much to be pushed in one direction have reacted with this violence.
He was cited as a Bernie Sanders supporter. It seemed to be a political attack.
And it was another example of how the political tensions between the two sides have gotten to the point where violence, it seems like a solution to some people, which it should never be.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, but we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair.
So originally, the only countries that were holdouts about signing this agreement were us, Nicaragua, and Syria, which is kind of says something about this agreement. If every nation in the world, basically, with the exception of these three, are signing it, and now we're the only ones.
You need some kind of global agreement. And the Paris Accords aren't perfect, and there are flaws in the Paris Accords, but at least we've got a global agreement. At least it sets targets. At least we're working towards it. And then Donald Trump withdraws us.
Do we have an intention to want to help the environment and want to curb global warming? Yes. Does that mean we have to do it in this capacity? No. And so I think that's so important, right? So what does it say to the rest of the world? I think it should say, you know, we're not going to be beholden to an agreement that I think mischaracterizes a lot of U.S. domestic natural gas and coal and fossil fuel output on behalf of other countries that we know are not going to comply.
President Trump ran on an America First agenda, and I think pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord was really evidence of that.
Otto Warmbier, the U.S. student freed from North Korea last week, has died. Warmbier had been returned to the U.S. in a coma on June 13th and then hospitalized.
Warmbier suffered what hospital officials described as a severe neurological injury during his captivity.
Otto Warmbier was an American who was in North Korea on a sort of a tourism trip, and he took a propaganda poster, which he had been warned not to do, and he tried to put it in his suitcase and bring it home. And for that, he was arrested by the North Korean police and within hours, basically, was put in prison. And when he was sent back, it was because he was in such bad shape that he died pretty soon after returning to the country. It was a glimpse inside North Korea that simply the act of taking a poster could end your life.
North Korea has been like really testing the waters.
It seems that this president and Kim Jong-un have a very particularly hostile relationship. Multiple missile tests throughout the year, increased sanctions.
As someone who voted for Trump, let me say that I have not been a huge fan of Trump using Twitter as a way of diplomacy or interacting with foreign leaders. Rocket Man.
Tonight, Kim Jong-un shut off his mouth, calling President Trump a mentally deranged dotard.
Donald Trump called Kim Jong-un, I think, short and fat, which is diplomacy unlike anything we'll likely see again, and we've not seen already. Whether the name calling is going to be effective, who knows? It certainly has the virtue of never been tried before.
North Korea is increasingly defiant and lacking any sort of semblance of reality. It seems that they're quite hell-bent on wanting to get into a conflict. I don't think we should give it to them. When someone wants a fight, it's usually a fight you don't want to pick. That would not end well for either side. I mean, we would end up winning, but at what cost is the question.
At least 7 are dead and more than 30 are in hospitals following a night of terror in London. ISIS is now claiming responsibility.
Things have changed here since Saturday's attack, most notably these barriers that popped up overnight here on Westminster Bridge and others to stop vehicles from driving onto the sidewalk.
In 2017, cars really became like the new weapon of choice for people who wanted to commit mass killings.
It is a sad state of affairs that there are so many of these things happening that it's hard to keep them straight.
The attack in Barcelona, the one in New York City on Halloween.
It's happening so frequently, and it's happening in so many places that none of these tragedies can hold the attention of the world for very long because there's another one right behind it.
You actually started documenting it as soon as you got into the car.
I was honestly concerned that he might lie about the nature of our meeting, and so I thought it really important to document. I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there are tapes.
As more and more has come out about James Comey and as he's become more active on Twitter, I think that he is more political than we thought in the past.
When you watch James Comey testify before Congress, you're like, wow. There are people in public service who take this very, very seriously.
Yeah, I remember just like Twitter being like mad funny because he's just like, yes, I do have a recollection of that. I do have record of that somewhere. I did take notes on that meeting. What'd you have for breakfast today? I did take a picture of my breakfast this morning, but I will have to refer to that because I do believe I had Cheerios, but they could have been Honey Nut, and I'm not exactly sure. That was like the big thing, like Comey got his receipts.
He is an interesting character. 10 years from now, the biography of James Comey, that's gonna be a good book.
So many bad things happened to women in 2017, and Wonder Woman came in and took us all in her arms and said, it's gonna be okay. This movie was so good. It was so important. It was so important to little girls, to grown women.
I loved Wonder Woman. I cried within the first, minute.
Not since Marley and Me have I heard more people crying in a movie theater, but this time it was out of happiness because Wonder Woman made us feel so good and so empowered.
A smash hit in the box office with Patty Jenkins, the first female director to gross over $100 million in opening weekend. That's huge.
A powerful fighter and a powerful force for good who also is a woman. And that's not a detriment to her power, it's part of it. I mean, there were so many moments during that movie where you watched it and were just like, yes, thank you. This is so cool. Finally.
The Russia investigation the president calls fake has just become a very real problem for his son. Today, Donald Trump Jr. released an exchange of emails in which he accepts what's purported to be an offer of help from the Russian government in his father's campaign against Hillary Clinton.
Publicist Rob Goldstone told Trump Jr. this is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but is part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump. Trump Jr. responded, if it's what you say, I love it.
In the middle of all this continuing discussion of Russia and Russia affecting the election and Russia being involved in helping Trump win, Donald Trump Jr. released many emails that he had with someone who had promised intel on Hillary Clinton that would help the Trump campaign.
In June of 2016, he had had some fairly suspicious meetings with the Russians.
And he released it, he claimed, in the name of transparency, but it might have had something to do with the fact that the New York Times was going to release all of these emails really shortly thereafter. So in some way, he was doing that thing where it's like, you can't dump me, I'm breaking up with you first.
And a lot of people said that that was proof that the campaign tried to collude with the Russians, but really that doesn't prove enough.
I remember watching the Republican National Convention and somebody came on and said, Don Jr., that guy's presidential material himself. And other people who think the guy is a total clown who's gonna be in jail.
Press Secretary Sean Spicer has resigned. The White House announced that Sarah Huckabee Sanders will take his place next month, and Anthony Scaramucci will lead the administration's communications team.
President Trump has found a kind of kindred spirit in his newly appointed communications director. Anthony Scaramucci communicates the way the president does. He uses big gestures, simple language, and brings a business perspective to how Washington should work.
The Mooch lasted as communications director for only 10 days. 10, that's not even a whole pay period.
Guy comes in, Scaramucci's been sort of working with Trump, made money on Wall Street. He's got the look of like some kind of like ex-boxer or something. He seems like somebody who might kind of take control, maybe be good with the press, maybe be tough in the way Trump really likes.
I've never been a journalist, but I have played a journalist on television. You know, I used to host Wall Street Week.
Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch. I liked him. I think that he was very smooth.
And then like he immediately gets on the phone with the New Yorker.
He said a lot of very vulgar things about his coworkers.
While Ryan Lizza is recording. He lasted 10 days. Like, to get fired from the Trump White House for saying offensive things, you have to say really offensive things. It was like a firecracker that seems exciting. You light it, it kind of goes wrong and like blows up the table around you and then goes out.
While most Americans were sleeping, the 7-year Republican battle to repeal and replace Obamacare died on the floor of the United States Senate.
In the wee hours of the morning, Senate Leader Mitch McConnell said he had exhausted all options.
This is a disappointment.
Ms. Murkowski.
Alaska's Lisa Murkowski and Maine's Susan Collins were the first to buck their party, as they have all week.
Thank you, Collins!
That left Arizona's John McCain. He flashed a gasp-inducing thumbs down. Devastating McConnell, as Democrat Chuck Schumer shushed his elated troops.
Over the summer, we saw the Republican Party finally get serious about some version of a health care repeal.
President Trump and his minions are treating their new healthcare bill like a friend who wants you to listen to a song, and if you don't like it, they're like, no, but just listen to it again. It's like fetch. They keep trying to make Trump care happen, and it's not gonna happen.
Trump says we're gonna get rid of Obamacare, and it seems like they're so close. They keep getting close, and they try once. It doesn't quite get through the Senate. They try twice, it doesn't quite get through the Senate. They try again. And then finally, there's the climactic moment. It happens at like 11 o'clock at night, and they're one vote away from kind of nixing Obamacare and doing what the Republicans have been saying they're going to do since the day it came through. And then here comes John McCain.
McCain, right? I respect John McCain a lot, and I think he's someone that chooses principle over party. I do think that he was wrong in that decision.
He voted no, and he totally sank Republican efforts to knock away Obamacare. It was like one of those basketball games where some surprising person hits the three-pointer with the team down by 2 and the clock running down to 0.00. It was just a crazy moment, and whether you're on the team that won or the team that lost, the drama was wild.
R. Kelly at the center of explosive allegations. At least 2 sets of parents reported the 50-year-old singer to police. One set of parents claim it was as if their daughter was brainwashed. BuzzFeed News cites 3 more sources who claim that 6 women live in properties rented by Kelly, and he allegedly controls every aspect of their lives.
Is R. Kelly's music so good that we would ignore the fact that he has women allegedly captive? I'm not understanding why. I'm not understanding how people could hear the incredibly detailed and horrific allegations against R. Kelly and still be like, still like his music though.
The music industry today is remembering the life of Linkin Park lead singer Chester Bennington. He was 41 years old, and the artist was found dead in his Los Angeles home yesterday. Authorities are investigating his death as an apparent suicide.
Chester Bennington was definitely like one of my favorite artists. Linkin Park was my favorite band, and I mean, is my favorite band. I remember I was sitting at my desk when we heard that Chester Bennington had committed suicide, and I had to like leave my desk to like go cry in the bathroom because I remember listening to Meteora and Hybrid Theory like all the time when I was growing up. He was really like a big part of my life growing up. And I know that for a lot of millennials and a lot of young people, that was really, really hard to come to terms with, is that there was so much pain in somebody that brought me so much comfort.
In his inaugural address, President Trump said, "When you open your heart to patriotism, there's no room for prejudice." But today, the commander-in-chief decided there is no room for patriotic transgender Americans willing to serve their country in the U.S. military.
So Trump announces that he's going to ban transgender people in the military, which is a big deal, right? Transgender rights are a huge issue in America right now. You know, a lot of us have transgender members of our family or transgender friends, you know, and it's something that's becoming very prevalent. And then suddenly Trump announces that he's going to ban transgender people in the military, and he does it on Twitter?
Lots of backlash, lots of transgender military members denounced it. You know, the military was pretty in support of it, at least the leadership. Some people further down, not so much. I don't think that issue is going to go away anytime soon.
All of a sudden, here's a tweet, no transgender people in the military. Oh, really? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? I don't know. We should probably debate this here in America.
Over the weekend, Unite the Right brought together hate groups from around the country, including neo-Nazis, KKK, and white pride groups.
They were expecting several thousand protesters, and they all showed up.
On Friday, men marched with tiki torches on the University of Virginia campus, and Saturday they marched downtown brandishing Nazi salutes and chanting, "Hail Trump."
One person is dead and 19 injured after a speeding vehicle drove into a group of protesters marching peacefully through downtown Charlottesville.
While Confederate statues stand silent and lifeless, violent extremism is very much alive in America. In Charlottesville, we saw and heard jarring reminders of America's darkest days.
Oh, God. So Charlottesville was one of those moments where everybody knew there were going to be protests in Charlottesville, and they were going to be sort of alt-right protests, and there were going to be counter-protests. And you sort of hoped that it would all be kind of peaceful and go away. And then it just, as happens so often, oh wait, these alt-right protests, they're Nazis, they're Klansmen, and they're walking with tiki torches and screaming, "Jews will not replace us." And then there's the counter-protest, and then one of the guys in the alt-right drives his car into a crowd and kills this young woman. It was just awful. And there are moments in America where you think, this is just a stage, this country is strong. And then there are moments where you think, what is happening? You know, are we Germany in the early 1930s? Is something just cataclysmically awful about to happen? We have actual Nazis marching in America who kill a protester. And then the president gives a press conference where he says, oh, they're bad people on all sides.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
It seems like a pretty easy thing to do to say, you know, to condemn Nazis. But Donald Trump didn't immediately do that.
That was one of the moments where I really feared for the country, because we've been going in the other direction, right? We've been going towards inclusion. And the notion that Nazis are coming back and the president is not going to denounce them after they've killed someone, that made me worry.
The wife of Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin made news with an Insta-rant on Instagram. It all started when Louise Linton posted a picture of herself yesterday getting off a government plane, mentioning designer labels from her outfit, including Hermes and Tom Ford. An Oregon woman responded, "Glad we could pay for your little getaway. #deplorable. Linton fired back, "Pretty sure the amount we sacrifice per year is a lot more than you'd be willing to sacrifice, and you're adorably out of touch."
It was just the most mean girl response that she sort of then apologized a little bit for, but not really. And every subsequent appearance, it's just, I mean, she sort of is just leaning into this a little bit. I mean, the latest one is her wearing black gloves up to her elbow and this black coat, holding a sheet of dollar bills with her husband, and just with this look on her face like she has puppies in her handbag that she's going to skin and to make into a coat.
I think that might have been the first time they'd seen $1 bills, so maybe they were just shocked.
I mean, she's like campaigning to be a Disney villain, basically. And I hope she wins, because I'll watch that movie. She's a great villain.
It is the year 2017, and a total eclipse of the sun is about to begin.
This crowd is very, very excited. Anthony, this is just incredible to watch. It's gone. It's gone. We're in darkness.
Oh, you can see it. You can see it. There it is.
I totally cried.
Why did you cry?
I don't know, it was just so awesome.
Try to remember where you were, what was going on when you saw this happen.
The solar eclipse is the biggest celebrity of 2017. People could not stop talking about the eclipse. They were talking about the eclipse like it was like Brad, Angelina, George Clooney, Beyonce, and Jay-Z all wrapped up into one.
So the solar eclipse, that was great. It was like the moment where the red states and the blue states genuinely came together. Like everybody in America was interested in the solar eclipse.
I got the little glasses, went up on the roof, you know, made a whole big thing about it. All these different like ways of looking through it, like using the cardboard boxes and the paper plates. We were all like little kids on like a school field trip that day.
People were ready to risk it all for the eclipse. They were like, I'm gonna give up my eyesight, I'm gonna give up my job because I gotta get in my RV and drive 30 hours to go get into the path of totality. People were losing it for the eclipse, and with reason. Like when the earth stunts on you, like you can't help but take notice. The earth was like, yes, like y'all will gag.
The cardinal rule of an eclipse is that you cannot use it as an excuse to point your eyeballs at the sun. It will hurt your eyes. And they made it very clear. And of course, Donald Trump, who does not like being told what to do, clearly decided to celebrate this eclipse by staring directly at the sun.
I remember watching the clip and he looked up at the sky at the eclipse and the people in the crowd started being like, no, sir, don't do it.
These things that don't happen in America anymore happen, right? People coming together across lines. Like there's nothing to argue about the solar eclipse. It's cool. Secondly, science, right? Actually caring about science.
You know, it's the rare pop culture moment where people are genuinely interested in learning about something.
That's good. We haven't had that in a while.
Video inside the eye wall of Hurricane Harvey shows the power of a Category 4 as it barreled into the Gulf Coast last night.
Wow, super strong winds right now.
Overnight, Irma continued its slow crawl north across Florida.
The communication has been cut. Power is out. Folks here aren't even able to reach relatives.
I know that leaders aren't supposed to cry, and especially not on TV. But we are having a humanitarian crisis.
We had Harvey, and then we had Irma.
And Maria.
We had total devastation in the Caribbean. We had total devastation in Puerto Rico. Total devastation in Houston. And that was a moment where if you haven't been concerned about climate change, you really ought to get concerned about climate change.
In Puerto Rico, there's been a lot of controversy around the government's response to Hurricane Maria and if their response has been significant enough or helpful enough.
The fact that you have a Real Housewife of New York, Bethany Frankel, doing more for the people of Puerto Rico than the United States president is crazy to me.
Guys, like this is a part of the US. Like this is America. This is the US, and we should be working just as hard to make sure that they get aid and they get what they need just as much as we did with Houston.